to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle. I'm joined today by defense reporter Mike Brest. Mike, the United Nations has come out with a report on the status of human rights in China, particularly with regard to the Uyghurs. Found some fairly damning things. Talk a little bit about what was in the report.
So first, this was a highly anticipated report. Its release has been delayed, so there really was a lot of buildup behind the release of this report. And its finding, first and foremost, is that they are committing
crimes against humanity,
yeah,
at least things that border on crimes.
Yeah, so it borders on crimes against humanity. It's hard for them to make an official determination, but they've seen signs and have concluded that there's a high likelihood that crimes against humanity, specifically against the Uyghur people, are occurring specifically in the region in China that they live in. And so China, over recent years, have set up re-education camps or detention centers, and so this has been very concerning. The UN said, talking about detainments for sole purposes of being a part of this minority group for undetermined lengths of time. There's very little supervision or oversight, so a lot of these people are just forcibly disappeared, taken from their families, put into these camps. Now this this investigation, while it was had a lot of momentum behind it in its release, doesn't actually change the status of anything, because the UN doesn't have the ability to sort of use that muscle. Now, it's unclear how, say, the United States and other Western countries react to the details in the findings of the report, but there is no actual steps really moving forward from the UN.
I mean, China is a permanent member of the UN Security Council. Obviously, it's an important diplomatic power, but there's been a lot of discussion of forced labor among the Uyghurs. Biden administration and Congress have tried to address some of these issues legislatively and diplomatically, but China's been pretty active. There's been a lot of saber rattling with Taiwan. Talk of some diplomatic initiatives, maybe another Biden she-call, the General Secretary of the Communist Party over there.
Absolutely, and even earlier today we found out that the Chinese Communist Party came out against the UN report, saying it was filled with lies, founded or based in misinformation, and so they had been protesting the report itself, the findings, its release. They've been protesting the entire way, saying it's all chock full of lies. But it really is sort of part of the greater playbook that we're seeing between the United States and China unfolding in higher tensions.
And it's sort of something maybe a little bit out of the Russian playbook, where there are well-documented allegations of wrongdoing and human rights abuses, and the government disputes them and categorically denies them as misinformation.
Absolutely. It's a strategy we're seeing now, as you said, in both conflicts, and so it'll be interesting to see if the U.S. is able to respond in turn, because we've seen the U.S., as it relates to Russia, preemptively declassify intelligence to sort of warn the media and the public ahead of time about what Russia is considering, some of their darker options. And so it'll be interesting to see if the U.S. feels like they can play that game with China as that conflict continues.
Unfortunately, it wasn't the only disturbing report that's been released recently. The Department of Defense has been tracking sexual assault numbers in the military, released their results. What did we find?
So the number of women U.S. soldiers in the military in 2021 reported a record level of sexual assaults. Now, these statistics only date back to 2006, so it should be noted that we're talking less than a 20-year period. That being said, the last time this study was conducted was in 2018, so we compare stats from 2018 to the stats taken last year, and what we found is, as I mentioned, the highest percentage of U.S. female soldiers reported being sexually assaulted was 8.4%, which is roughly 20,000 soldiers. Now, in addition to the 20,000 female service members, there were another about 15,000 male service members who reported unwanted sexual contact. And so when you break it down even further, the amount of reporting in these cases has also gone down from 2021 to dating back to 2018, we saw in 2018 about 30% of cases were being reported to their superiors. In 2021, that number dropped to 20%. And so even though a larger number overall of cases were reported, the growth between the 2 years were so drastic that it was even still a lower percentage of them. And so the DoD has been adamant about some recent changes that they've made and highlighting those and saying those will change what we're seeing now. But it's too early to really understand whether or not the choices and the policies that Secretary Austin have implemented will change the crisis that we're seeing in the military.
I mean, because this has been a major initiative to get this under control within the service branches for quite some time now.
Absolutely.
And on Capitol Hill, there's been a lot of pressure because many members of Congress don't think the Department of Defense has gone far enough in dealing with this and has pushed for more reforms. But it doesn't look like at the moment that we've seen quite enough progress on this.
Yeah, so it's hard to exactly tell because we saw a big push from Congress over the last year. We saw some overhaul in the way the military prosecutes these types of cases or handles these types of cases, but it's still too soon to really tell whether or not these will have an impact on the numbers, and it's hard to really figure that out until we get further down the road to be able to make that comparison. But it does show that whatever they've been doing in the recent past clearly didn't work because numbers have gone up to such an extent.
So the Russian invasion of Ukraine continues apace. That war is ongoing. There have been some estimates now about how the Ukrainian counteroffensive is going. United Kingdom Defense Ministry had some thoughts on that. Talk a little bit about what they found.
Yeah, so it's about a week now since Ukraine said they started this counteroffensive, specifically in the south. And the perceived objective of this counteroffensive is to recapture, liberate the city of Kherson, which is a strategically important city in the south because of its location along multiple bodies of water. And so within the first 48 or 72 hours, the UK Defense Ministry said that they were already poking holes in the Russian front lines at some of its thinnest points, and that Russia was already trying to send in sort of support from their troops in the eastern part of Ukraine.
And so Russia now has finally obtained, we knew that they were in the process of getting these, but they've obtained a new weapon for use in Ukraine.
Yeah, so they have now acquired Iranian drones. Now we don't know exactly how many, but administration officials say they believe Russia is hoping to acquire hundreds of Iranian drones. And as we know, the airspace in Ukraine remains contested. It was a foregone conclusion ahead of the war that Russia should be able to dominate the airspace.
Right.
And based on the military aid that Ukraine has got from the United States and other Western countries, they've been able to prevent that.
Right.
And so it's unclear exactly if the Iranian drones will be able to push that in the Russians' favor and if that could make a substantial impact in the war and how it's fought.
Kind of a remarkable development, though, when you think about it. I mean, Iran is supplying drones to Russia. We're in the midst of negotiating a nuclear deal with Iran, trying to get them back and ourselves back into that pact. Russia is a party to those negotiations. It's a very complicated dynamic.
It's a whole bunch of moving pieces. The U.S. wants different things from different country. Each country, all three, want their own, want their own concessions from the other countries, and they want to be able to do what they want. But the United States is balancing a very difficult juggling act with a more aggressive or more provocative Iran and a more provocative and aggressive Russia, and trying to maintain both as they are now starting to work more hand in glove.
Thank you, Mike. You can read Mike and the rest of our national security team's coverage at washingtonexaminer.com.